Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Tuesday, the 20th of August. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barry. How's it going, Joshua?
Good, Derek. Good to be with you, as ever. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, good to have you on, and good to be back in the chair as well. It was good to be on yesterday. Did the Q&A yesterday as well. Loads of questions fired in, so as expected. But yeah, enjoyable to be back on talking all things Rangers. Right, before we get stuck into this morning's show, there's plenty to talk about. Just wanted to give a special mention to a former Ranger who sadly passed away recently. Many may not remember him, but he was a player that spent 4 seasons at Rangers in the 50s, joined in 1957. John Curry is his name. So he's been laid to rest today, and they're having a little meet over at Busby Hotel later on this afternoon. But yeah, he's going to be laid to rest wearing his Rangers tie given to him by the club back in 1957. Yeah, John Curry is his name. He was on the books at Rangers for a number of seasons, never quite made the breakthrough, but was a regular in the reserves. And yeah, a sad loss. So condolences to the Curry family, his friends and family. And hopefully it's a nice gathering later on today. Right, let's move on to the Rangers news, Joshua, and it's we'll start off with some off-field issues at the moment. Chris had a story on the website. Go and check it out, folks, about the return to Ibrox, and Rangers appear now to be on track to return to Ibrox by the end of next month. It's after the final shipment of steel needed to complete the delayed renovation works in the Copeland Road stand was delivered on schedule. Now, we know that Chairman John Bennett said it was an aspirational achievement to be back in at Ibrox by the end of September. But this is good news, Joshua. The sooner Rangers are back there, the better. Fingers crossed that the construction workers can crack on and the team can get back in there as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think playing at Hampden was always going to be an underwhelming experience for Rangers compared to playing at Ibrox, and obviously I think it's had its challenges, and I don't think people will nearly have enjoyed it as much. So obviously it was always going to be the sooner that they could get back into Ibrox, the better. When John Bennett spoke about this, he caveated a lot, and you could, I think, see in his expression that he wanted to say definitively when Rangers would be back at Ibrox. And I believe he called, as you said there, Derek, the end of September, an aspirational target. That all depended very much on when the shipments would arrive, why Rangers got into this mess in the first place, not having the steel that is required to finish the works they've started in the Copeland stand. But as you say, that has arrived yesterday, as we have on the website. And listen, Rangers need a bit of positivity. They need a bit of positivity on the park and off the park. And if they can start to work towards that date at the end of September, where it's not miles away, it's a month away, there's only a couple more trips then for people to go to Hampden, then the perspective starts to look a little bit better, because they need to get back there as soon as possible. And I even think when you heard Philippe Clement speak about it recently, he said the lines that no, will never be home, kind of utilised the analogy of a second home. He's had to make the best of it. Fans that have been going there have had to make the best of it, but it's not going to be a comparable experience to what Rangers can try to do and try to turn their home stadium into this season. So on track. We'll see what happens over the case in the course of the next month. But that news is probably a little bit of positivity in a summer that's needed it, even if it's it's just in response to a situation that has been a negative this summer.
Yeah, what's it been like at Hampden, Joshua? I know that they've tried to Rangers it as much as they possibly could, but it's not the same, is it?
Yeah, and I think a lot of fans have tried to generate an atmosphere. Obviously, a lot depends on the football that's on the park. The big thing about Hampden is always, and this isn't exclusive to when Rangers play there, but when Scotland play there, it's in cup finals, cup semi-finals. I always feel as sitting there in the press box is right in the middle, but you just feel that everyone is really far away. And that's not a particularly new thing to state about Hampden. As mentioned, I think people have tried to generate an atmosphere. It's a bit of a weird experience because you go there and you're used to going there watching Rangers when it is a semi-final, a final. But yeah, it just feels a bit incomplete, I would say, and kind of out of the ordinary. It was strange, especially that first home game against Motherwell when Ibrox was really when Hampden was really full. But it was a strange experience going there for a league match. So I don't think it's I don't think it's a number of games that people will look back on really fondly. And you think back to that Dynamo Kyiv game. I know it's a different opponent, but I remember in European qualifiers a few years ago when I think it was John Lundstrom got sent off against Alishkert. Rangers had 10 men. It was only the first leg, but they managed to kind of rally, and I think Morelos scored the goal, ended up 1-0. When Rangers went to 10 men against Kyiv, there was a bit of a siege mentality for a bit, and Rangers were on top for maybe, I would say, 5-10 minutes after the red card. And you just felt if that was an Ibrox, would it have given you an extra edge that can become cliche, but anyone who's been at these European nights over the past number of years will have seen the evidence of it. So I think the sooner the Rangers can get back to Ibrox, the better, and hopefully it gives them a little bit of a lift that I think their performances probably need.
Yeah, well, the Dundee game in the Premier Sports Cup quarter-finals will take place at Hampden. If Rangers are successful in that game, then they will be back at Hampden for the semis and hopefully the final as they look to retain the trophy. That game against Dundee will take place the weekend of the 21st or the 22nd of September. So, one for your diaries, folks. Another bit of news, and it's a real pity we have to report on this over the weekend. Sickening scenes outside at Hampden prior to the game, in which the St Johnstone SLO was assaulted and robbed of a drum outside the ground, and Rangers have issued indefinite bans to 4 supporters in response to that. A Rangers spokesperson confirmed yesterday. It says Rangers can confirm it's issued indefinite bans to 4 individuals as inquiries continue following the incident outside Hampden Park on Saturday. Rangers has reached out to the St Johnstone employee to check on their well-being and to apologise on behalf of the club. We abhor and condemn all incidents like this in the strongest terms and continue to support Police Scotland with their ongoing investigation. Police Scotland say a 22-year-old man has been arrested and charged in connection with the incident, and 2 more arrests have been made following a separate disturbance that erupted shortly after that initial event as well. Not the sort of stuff you want to see, Joshua. Guys like this have got no place following Rangers for me. I'm pleased that the club have came out with these bans. I hope it's a very lengthy bans at that, an absolutely disgraceful thing to witness before the game on Saturday, and I hope not to see anything like that ever again.
Yeah, no, I think indefinite. You need to be strong with these things, don't you? The St Johnstone SLO, she put a tweet out yesterday, I think, which was good to hear. But it's you say you don't want to see something like that at a football ground. It's so far away. That statement feels so like such an understatement when someone is literally there doing their job. So I think it was important that whatever football club it is, that you need to get these scenes, this type of behaviour as far away from the football ground as possible, so that people feel safe to go and do their job. So I think it was right that not only that happened, but that it happened really quickly. And obviously that has been the case yesterday, that news has come out.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's move on to on-field issues. A lot of questions coming in about what's happening. Graham Hall with the point says, good morning, lads. Getting really worried about the lack of transfer movement. And a point from Callum ties in with Chris's piece on the website this morning. Go and check it out, folks. The link is in the description below. Any news on Hagi and Cantwell? A number of people were posting that question on the Q&A yesterday, Joshua, as well, about, Hagi was playing for the B team against Blackburn yesterday, of course. We know about the wage situation with regards to him. Cantwell, we know, has asked for a transfer. Nothing has materialised. That's been a good few weeks now since Philip Clement came into that press conference at Birmingham to just give us an idea of the lay of the land and what's happening. They are still Rangers employees. I've got something irks with me about Yanis Hagi playing for the B team when Rangers require quality in the final third, Joshua, especially Hagi. Cantwell as well has been paid by Rangers. For me, if they're employees of the club, they should be used and considered for the first team until they depart the building. I know that many will disagree with that. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, well, I think overall, first and foremost, Rangers would have expected one of two things to happen by this point in the window. So, how many players? They've signed 7 new players this window. I think you've had Cortez with the loan and the obligation to buy. That money won't be spent now. The bulk of that money will be spent next summer. Mohamed Diomande, the money paid for his transfer, about 4.5 million, that was paid at the start of this summer as well. So we'll include him in this conversation. 9 players is quite a lot in a normal transfer window when you've had a major championships. 9 players is not a lot when you're in the situation that Rangers have been in, and when the length and the level of movement expected in terms of outgoings, that has been kind of set before going into the summer, isn't it? But I think Rangers would have expected one of two things to happen. Either they'd have reached the Champions League playoff stage, which they've obviously done in all bar one of the past 3 to 4 seasons, I think, which is when they got put out by Malmo. Or there would have been more situations like the Connor Goldson situation, where players do take it upon themselves to know that their future isn't clear at the club, that they're not going to hold the same role as they once did or they were brought in to do, and they go out and seek an alternative. And that neither of those two situations have materialised. As you heard with Clement speaking at the press conference last week, he held talks with players before pre-season, and a number of players were told that while they, as he, in the words he put it, he wasn't holding a gun to their head, but he effectively said that they are not part of the project. The important thing to remember in the whole of this summer, and again, this ties into the Yanis Hagi situation, which we'll come back to, is the wages. Rangers' wage bill has been allowed to run out of control because since 2021, 2022, their squad value has dipped. They haven't been able to sell players, but the wages have bumped up after Champions League qualification and other bonuses. So you then have a situation where the contingency planning in that squad, in that squad cycle over a number of years, doesn't happen. This is why I think the Hagi decision is right, because we know that it is to do with a certain wage clause that will be triggered. Rangers can't make short-term decisions like that. Now, you could say, Derek, that, okay, maybe Hagi helps you get into the Champions League qualifier, maybe then that money is worth it. But he's not seen as someone at the moment who's part of Clement's plans, so that would be a short-term decision. Now, where I do think Rangers have made some wrong short-term decisions is they've went into the Champions League qualifiers with only one fit number 10 and one fit striker. They've also spent money on a striker in Hamza Igamane who isn't anywhere near ready for first-team level. And that is a decision that, on the face of things, merits criticism, doesn't it? Because that is an easier avenue to say, okay, well, you should have made this better short-term decision to get that Champions League money. But I think those two things are the key points to come back to. Rangers would probably have expected to have reached that Champions League playoff or had a good chance of doing it, or for there to be more outgoings to free up wages. So that not only are you saving a little bit on fees, but you're saving on the wages that you bring a player in compared to the one who's left, like a Chefty for Borna Barisic, like a Connor Barron for John Lundstrom or Ryan Jack. And that is a sticking point. That is what is holding things up. Rangers have had talks with a number of players, and you look at the speed at which Robin Proper was brought in after Connor Goldson and Václav Černý was brought in after Sam Lammers. It is about trying to free up those wages over the remaining 11 to 12 days of the window, because, as I'm sure what a lot of comments are saying at the moment, and where I think they're absolutely spot on, is this Rangers squad in a stronger position right now than it was at the end of last season? We don't know yet, but I don't think you could say definitively that it is, and that is why people will be concerned approaching September if more significant transfer business does not follow.
Yeah, the Hagi situation, I remember a similar scenario happening, and let us know if I'm right or wrong with this one, folks. I remember Michael Ball back in the day. He was a Dick Advocaat signing, and I think Alex McLeish was looking to use him, but it would trigger a wage increase, if I'm not mistaken. But I think they came around the table and came to some sort of compromise, and he was able to contribute to Rangers. And I think was it the Helicopter Sunday season? I'm not too sure, but he did sort of play his part in Alex McLeish's side. But whether the player and the Rangers hierarchy can sit around the table and come to some sort of compromise, who knows? I think the most likely scenario is he moves out the building, but as yet, he's still a Rangers player, playing in the B team, as I mentioned there. Rangers thumped yesterday by Blackburn by 6-2 in that, but he's playing with the kids. And at this moment in time, we know there was a bit of noise surrounding Hagi and Fiorentina a couple of weeks ago. It was reported in Italy he had agreed personal terms, but it's obviously that the Italians have not reached an agreement with Rangers. Links, of course, he's always been linked with a move to his father's former club, Galatasaray, but nothing's really emanating from Turkey around regards to Hagi, but maybe that might heat up as the days trickle by. But it's a very unfortunate situation at this moment in time. On Cantwell, James with a point says, Cantwell should never ever play for our club again. He's so unprofessional. This is not the first club he's done this, and it won't be the last. How confident are you that he moves on before the window shuts, Joshua?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Because you look at that number 10 position, Derek, and you look at the game that Rangers have, the Old Firm game Rangers have in a couple of weeks, and I would not feel very confident if Rangers go in there with Lawrence and Dessers as their front two, as it were. Now, Dessers has started the season well. That's not a slight on him so much, but I think those two players together in that game, we've just seen it before. We've seen it before. I don't think that the energy would be sufficient at the top end of the pitch and the top of the Rangers midfield. Would imagine that you'd maybe push Igamane forward and play Sterling alongside Connor Barron in there. But the Cantwell situation is slightly different because it's not to do with contract. He's obviously a high earner. He came into to Rangers for effectively a free transfer nearly 2 years ago. You do think to a degree how it was come to this so quickly, because Cantwell was someone who there's been a lot of change at Rangers, and that's probably not helped him. He's had injuries, but ultimately I just think when you look at a player, the ones who go and make it, the ones who make the best of their careers are the ones who I think don't use that as an excuse. And Cantwell is now 26. He'll be moving to another club. It remains to be seen where that is. I think he really, at this stage of his career, needed a really good season, a really strong season. And for the first couple of months of this year, Derek, I think under Clement, it looked like that was going to happen. Now, his football isn't as natural a fit for Cantwell, because Cantwell isn't someone who thrives in those kind of big areas under Beale. That the play was a bit slower. He had a lot of freedom. The game was built around him. Suddenly, Clement comes in. He's stationed on the right wing. And he's clearly not been a player that's enjoyed working under Clement that much, because he's asked to leave. And although that conversation took place initially and Clement said he wanted to give him time to cool off, it has persisted throughout the summer. So it obviously remains to be seen where he's going to go, but you can't have Rangers cannot afford to have a situation where you have someone who is earning as much comparatively to the rest of the squad as Todd Cantwell, not involved in the team if he doesn't go. I think Rangers do still expect to be able to get him off the wage bill before the end of the transfer window. These things often drag out, especially when the buying club, as it were, they're in a strong negotiating position, because it's not as if Rangers will say, okay, if you don't buy him, don't worry, we'll put him back into the squad. Maybe in an extreme circumstance that could happen, but I think it's very, very unlikely, given that Clement has so publicly come out and said that. So I don't know what you think. It looks like there is only one outcome to this, and that number 10 position in particular. I know Diamande can play higher up the pitch, but Rangers need options in there, and they need to get Hagi and Cantwell out the door so that they can bring in not only quality behind Tom Lawrence, but I think a starting player in that position.
Yeah, I get that he wants to leave the club, but Rangers are still paying his wages, and he's paid handsomely. So it doesn't sit right with me that he can just sit there and idle and not feature and not be part of selection. And I know that Clement said that he can't hold a gun to players' heads and things like that, but these are, at the end of the day, these are players that can improve that Rangers first team at this moment in time. It is struggling in the final third, and it's a situation that is not desirable. So I would like to see movement with regards to that soon, and I know that a lot of supporters agree. Also, Rangers very light for me in the forward areas. Just on Cantwell, Denzel with a point says Cantwell will be really hard to jettison. This has been said. He's done this before. Generally, he's a member of the awkward squad while in place. Needs to grow up. Whether Rangers can move him on, who knows? A number of players have been mentioned in the comments that Rangers should be looking at in the forward areas. Now, one is a player that was linked when Gerrard was boss, Joshua, and that is Kevin Nisbet. Drew and many others saying, should Clement not be going after Kevin Nisbet? He's available, scored for fun up here. Now, he's at Millwall at this moment in time. By all accounts, Aberdeen have been credited with an interest in him after cashing in on Bojan Miovski, who joined Girona over in Spain. They are keen to sign him. He's 27 now, Kevin Nisbet. Scored 5 goals in the English Championship last season in 19 appearances. Kevin Nisbet.
Rangers aren't going to. I don't think that Rangers. If you look at the profile, look at the average age of players they've signed this season. If they've got a 29-year-old striker in Dessers and a 26 in Danilo, I don't think they're going to go and sign a 27-year-old. No. Again, the Hamza Igamane signing, that is one area. Hamza Igamane might go on and be really good for Rangers. I don't know. I've watched a little bit of him. I can't pretend to have real serious judgments about it. I believe there was excitement behind the scenes and in terms of the player, that the price that he was brought in for, and the feeling that he's a player with a lot of potential that when harnessed correctly. This is again an example of Rangers going into an under-tapped market, getting a young player, much like Chefty, and then potentially selling him on for a bigger fee down the line. In the short term, it doesn't look like a good decision purely because Rangers went into those 2 Champions League qualifiers not trusting Danilo enough to bring him off the bench. Now, we obviously saw him in the first half against St Johnstone. I like Danilo as a player. I still think he can be a really productive player for Rangers, and that's why Clement picked him when he first came into the club. But that is a signing that, in the short term, I think merits some criticism. But you still have 3 players in that position. You still have the possibility of what happens in the remaining 2 weeks of the window. Talk of Abdallah Sima's gone slightly cold again. I know he wasn't in Brighton's squad for the first game, the first Premiership game of the season. And that was always going to be one because of the separation and valuation, how much Brighton would like for him, how much Rangers would be willing to pay, given what his contract situation as well, that was going to rumble on until the end of the window. Where I think is the priority position at the moment is that number 10 position, the central midfield, and the left back, left wing position. Clement obviously said that the left back position is not a priority. I think the small bit of context around that is that, and I know there's been links to defender in Italy, is that perhaps if Rangers could get a defender there, then you could see Chefty as being an option higher up the pitch, because they do need cover in that left wing position at the moment, especially with Oscar Cortez's injury. Rabbi Matondo is someone who would be allowed to leave for the right price. Actually, thought it was quite good at the weekend, but again, it remains to be seen if the right price materialises and someone will be able to match the money that he is on at Rangers. So a lot of moving parts, but that left back, left wing situation is probably one to keep an eye on, because we do know that Chefty is flexible and can operate in either one of those positions, as can Robbie Fraser, because we've seen him come on at the left wing more than he's come on at left back under Clement in recent times.
Yeah, I'd like to see Robbie Fraser getting a run in the team. I've got to admit, with Chefty playing further up the pitch. And on that link to the Salernitana left back, Domagoj Bradaric, the Croatian, is interesting. I don't think it's an area. I think there's other pressing areas, like you say, Joshua. But with Ridvan out injured again, he's injury prone. Let's be honest. We can't rely on him. I think maybe the Clement is looking at that, thinking maybe we need to get someone more robust in at left back. And I mean, Rangers can't sell Ridvan at this moment in time, but they simply cannot rely on him.
Yeah. He hasn't been able to ever play consistently, and again, he's a player I really like, and he's one of these players that fell into the category of the belief that if you get him in a good pre-season where the style isn't changing, the manager isn't changing, because in his first 2 seasons he's played under 3 different managers, different roles, different training setups. We know that isn't conducive to players who maybe have sensitivities in terms of injuries. That's not conducive to them becoming fully fit and being able to play week in, week out. And it did look like Rangers believed that Ridvan was going to be able to play week in, week out, because he started every one of those 4 games and he didn't come off towards the end of them. And we hadn't seen that towards the tail end of last season. Clement hasn't given much information away on his injury, but certainly you look at 4 to 6 weeks, it's probably going to be longer than that until he gets up and ready for the first team. It's a bit of a calculated gamble they've taken with Ridvan, and he wasn't a player who had, he hadn't had surgery on his hamstring or anything before he came to Ibrox. There was that emphasis of building him up, because when he came to Ibrox, he was pretty slight compared to, I think, the last couple of seasons where he has put on more muscle mass. But again, it's this persistent issue of Rangers trying to build players up to be able to play at the intensity Clement wants. But then if those players break down, you kind of go back to the start, don't you? And the left back situation is a tricky area just now, because Oscar Cortez is also coming back from that injury. He's also not been able to put in consistent minutes. Now, Clement might say you've had 2 freak injuries within the space of this year, which is maybe true, but still, can you rely on him to then go and start 30, 40 games between now and the end of the season? So I'd say that left-sided position, the good thing is you have the versatility of Robbie Fraser and Shefty. That left-sided position, I think, whether it be left back, left midfield, does need more depth over on that side, not least because Fraser and Shefty are young players. Matondo, again, he's someone who's been inconsistent in his availability and his performances. He has that persistent knee issue, which has troubled him for a lot of his career. That and that number 10 position, Derek, is the area that I think Rangers really need strengthened in. Still think we need another centre-back as well. You could make this argument across a lot of areas of the pitch. Yeah. And again, it's dependent on those outgoings as to how busy they are between now and next Friday night.
Yeah, just on Igamane, I was on holiday when the manager was discussing him in his press conference last week, but I thought I seen this point where he said that Igamane is doing parts of the training now and showing interesting things with the ball, which I thought was, interesting for a manager to say about a player. Wonder what those interesting things are, but there seems to be a degree of mystery surrounding Hamza at this moment in time. Until we see him in the flesh, then we are just going to be asking questions about why Rangers have spent a sizable chunk of cash on this player and we have not yet seen him. We have seen the YouTube clips, but it's no use right now. Whether we see him at the weekend, I would doubt it. He's not been part of a matchday squad yet, has he? So I don't know what the situation is with regards to that at this moment in time. But Rangers are light up top. We discussed on the show, I think, was it yesterday, about Cyril Dessers, and if an offer was to come in, would you sell or would you be keeping Cyril? Cyril Dessers, for me, is unsellable at this moment in time, Joshua, unless Rangers have a ready-made replacement. You can guarantee you goals as soon as he arrives at the club.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, this ties into the conversation of not signing a striker who's ready now and more one for the future at the start of this window when you know where Danilo is in terms of his recovery, Derek. Because Dessers, on the face of things, we know what he is, we know what he isn't. I still think he's improving in a Rangers shirt. Scored 22 goals last season. Would expect him to get more than that this season. Part of the issue for me, and we're maybe repeating ourselves here, part of the issue for me is that he's been relied upon so heavily, and therefore he's almost fallen into that trap of being one of the players who has to carry a lot of the responsibility because others around him don't, or because others around him are inconsistent in their availability. He's 29 years old. Rangers wanted to recoup the fee that they paid for him if they were to sell him this summer, and there was interest from Europe and Saudi Arabia as well. The difficulty is, though, if you were to sell him today, and again, you've got that Old Firm game coming up in less than 2 weeks, who is ready to play there? So you do need a ready now signing to come in. Now, that can happen. I was watching the Tottenham game last night. They signed Solanke a few days ago, and he started for them up top. But he knows the league. He probably knows some of the teammates who he's played before. He's done a full pre-season. It's a slightly different situation. So it does just show, I think, where the start of the season has gone for Rangers, that you are mentioning Dessers perhaps being unsellable at the moment, because, again, it would be different if you had Champions League qualifiers and maybe you're trying to get into that competition. That isn't the case at the moment. He's also 29. And his value is only going to decrease from here. But you know what you're going to get from him over the course of the season. I'm totally confident if Dessers is to stay.
He has 20-plus goals this season, Joshua. Easy.
Yeah, he does. The question is, what does he not give you? And I think there's some discussion about in certain games. I actually thought Rangers looked better at points with Danilo up front on what day was it, Saturday, because he's a better back-to-goal player. That's not a strength of Dessers. He's not going to hold the ball up that much. He's not good with his back to goal. When you had Danilo in there and you had 2 wingers who wanted to cut inside and 2 fullbacks who could go either way, that felt a more natural fit for the type of football that Clement wants to play. But you're right there. He does hit north of 20 goals, I think, if he stays. He just needs more around him, because if you get into a situation where you're just relying on Dessers again, then we saw what happened last season when the team dropped off, when Dessers did have a bit of a dry spell in front of goals. He misses chances like that one away at Ross County. I don't think he can be relied upon to totally carry the team and overperform his expected goals, because he underperformed his expected goals slightly. But if he does stay over the course of a domestic season, you know that he is going to score, because he's done that really consistently. Whether it be another player on the wing, whether it be quality in the number 10 position, as Danilo continues to get back to full fitness, and he could play a big part this season. When he does get there, you just need more quality around him. So I don't think so. The Dessers is not one who's kind of shouldering all that responsibility.
Yep, agreed. Right, that'll do us there, folks. Before we finish up, big thank you to, as well as the YouTube channel, of course, we've got the website, and we had the flash sale on, which ended at midnight last night, and record numbers of you signing up to the website. So thank you to each and every one of you for doing just that. And hopefully you enjoy the content over on the site. Joshua, you want to jump in there?
Yes. So I was just going to say, we've got a new, as people, attentive watchers of the YouTube channel will know, Derek, we've got a few new shows that have been kicking off, which are live first to our members before they go live to the general audience. So if you want to get these type of videos earlier, then do become a YouTube member as well. We've got Chris and Stevie with their new show. Myself and Adam, we're going to be recording today. Adam Thornton, good friend of the Rangers Review, are going to be recording our new tactic show every week, where we talk about things that we find interesting and some people find interesting too, such as today we're going to talk about Robin Proper. What type of player is he? What have we seen so far? We're going to talk about Chefty, his signing, what that tells us about Clement's style of play, a few other topics as well. But we're going to be recording that most weeks. So it's going to be live to YouTube members first, and then live and more generally on YouTube later on in the evening. So that should be with YouTube members about 5 o'clock tonight. If you want to get that at that time, then sign up to the YouTube channel. You need to do that on a desktop, and that's one of a number of videos, extra videos alongside the morning briefing, that hopefully people will enjoy. And signing up to the website, as a lot of people have done, gives you that content on the website, gives you a load of written content, but also allows us to continue to do this video content as well. So hopefully, however you want to consume your Rangers content, even when the football isn't great as it is just now, you can do so across a number of different platforms. Yeah, top class. Right. Excellent stuff. Thank you to each and every one of you for joining us on the show this morning, as ever. As Joshua says, show to look forward to. Those are the extra members, himself and Adam, a little later on. I'll be back tomorrow, so we hope you can join us then. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Bye for now.